Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in San Diego Soccer History. I'm John Cross, along with Dylan Wilson. And Dylan, how are you doing this evening?
Doing all right. Hanging in there heat wise. We had a little bit of a respite over the weekend, but it's back at it. Yeah, doing all right generally. Um, yeah, I guess I thought I had a follow up there, but I don't.
All right. Yeah, I agree with you. It's getting hot and looks like it's going to be getting hotter during the week. But I did want to ask you, I saw on socials today a little post by the people from Football Heritage asking about the a club you could revive as a a dead club you could revive as a fan owned club if you could, and I saw that you had responded to that. What did you respond?
I did. I guess I'm not. I guess I follow them. I'm not too familiar with football heritage, but I just tossed in San Diego Loyal, and I kind of wish I'd read the message a little closer because they actually asked why, and I didn't really elaborate, even though that would have been a good opportunity to kind of explain some of the things I enjoyed and reminisce a little. But yeah, they even responded that they really enjoyed the Glory Mag edition, Glory
Right.
magazine about Loyal, which I thought was pretty neat. So yeah, that was a fun little one of the things you do still enjoy about socials.
Yes, and that's Football Heritage. For anybody who doesn't know, they're focused mostly in the UK and specifically in Scotland, but really they also look around the world and just look at what makes football heritage, and they really try to dive deep into the culture and the history of football clubs. It's a great podcast if you get the chance to listen to it, and they put out some things on the socials as well. So obviously, for someone like me who loves history and the sport as well, it's a group that I follow quite a bit and look at some of their resources and listen to their podcasts. But that was interesting. I didn't expect to see your uh, response. I had liked it on there because that was going to be my response. That if I could do that was going to be exactly that. But I didn't really have time to really engage in a dialogue there on social media today. Um, but that was kind of warmed my heart. It was very nice to see both the thrown out comment there by Football Heritage and then come across your post as well.
Yeah, it was a nice little interaction. I wasn't expecting to get any response, but I appreciated them mentioning that Glory Mag, which I actually have on my table and I haven't flipped through since I first got it really, so maybe it's time to revisit that.
You know, I have two,
I do as
and
well, yeah, the special edition
I
that
have one that's still, I think, boxed up. I think it came in a box. I can't remember now. Um, and the other one I have, but I I still haven't looked at it. I haven't opened it at
oh
all and
wow.
gone through it. I was going to when the season ended in 2023, and then all the transition stuff happened of trying to look to go to STFC, and I just couldn't bring myself to look at it because I knew all the memories and everything. It was just um, hadn't really looked at it, and I actually have a note on my calendar on the 5 year anniversary of the end of San Diego Oil there, um, to actually go back and look through it. And I don't know, I might look at it before that, but that might be the first time I actually look through it. I've seen a few pages here and there of other people's copies that they've had out and about at different times. Um, but myself, I haven't actually been through the entire article, and I'm really hoping when I do, it'll be a nice trip down memory lane.
Yeah, I mean, hard to believe we're about 3 years removed from the announcement that the club would not be continuing. Maybe even a little over 3 years. It's kind of hard to believe it's been that long already.
Yeah, almost 3 years to the day. I think it was the 24th of August, somewhere around there, that the official announcement came out, that they weren't going to
Oh,
be
okay, almost.
extending beyond the end of the 2023 season. So, yeah, almost 3 years already, and uh, time time flies. Um, Moving to another thing before we get into our normal show, I noticed that the final teams were, officially announced of the ones who are going to go into qualification for the 2027 U.S. Open Cup. So we know the 16 amateur teams that got the direct qualification, and then there's, I think it was 155 teams are competing for those final 16 qualification spots. So I believe next week should be the draw to see the matchups. And I did just a quick skim through the list, not a real close skim, but the only two San Diego names I noticed in there were Chula Vista FC and San Diego Enter, which those two teams, I'm not surprised that they made the effort to be in the qualifying rounds. A little surprised and disappointed that there weren't more teams, because we had certainly, what do we have, like 4 in San Diego last year? We had quite a few, because there were several games we were able to go to here locally before SD Enter went up to Irvine for that final match to see who qualified.
That's right. I don't remember how many specifically, but I do think it was more than 2.
Yeah, because we saw some games, at least a couple with San Diego Enter in, I think, San Diego. Anyway, I'm looking forward to it. Always enjoy the Open Cup and the qualifying rounds for the amateur teams. Just a little disappointed. We just seem to be going backwards. We had for a few years, especially when the Loyal were around and SDFC/Albion, we had teams that automatically qualified, and then we might have some amateur teams that also make it in. So we always had a few rounds of US Open Cup to enjoy locally. Now it's getting harder and harder for us to see some matches in person. Hopefully whoever wins, because I'm sure SD Enter and Chula Vista FC will be matched up in the opening round, just the way they do their regional matchups. One of those can host another local matchup when they bring in another, probably Orange County or Riverside team for that next round. But either way, looking forward to getting out to see some Open Cup matches again.
Yeah, absolutely. When do we know when the first round is scheduled, or have they not dropped the specific schedule yet?
I don't know if the dates were dropped, like when the games should be, like the 2 or 3 day window. But I believe the draw on the matchups for the first round should be happening next week. But okay. I just saw some of that came out today and just skimmed through a US soccer article just to kind of see who the local teams were. But I don't really have all that information here. Sure, we'll get a lot more detail before we do our podcast next week. All right.
Looking forward to it.
Let's go ahead and get into our show for this week, and let's pull up our trivia question that we left you with last week. And it was, name the former San Diego Sockers player who stepped up to coach the short-lived second iteration of the San Diego Sockers, which ran from 2001 to 2004. So, Dylan, I know this is still before your time, for your real even soccer interest time, I guess. But do you have any idea?
No, I had nothing.
Yeah, and I actually had forgotten that he was the coach when the first iteration of the Sockers ended, and then picked up being the coach again. Like he transitioned from player to a coach for, I think, the last 2 years of the original San Diego Sockers, but then became coach again for this 5-year stint. And the answer is, of course, Brian Quinn, who, as of 2026, when we're recording this, is the men's coach at USD. All right. We had that as our topic for our trivia question because this week is the 25th anniversary of when professional soccer returned to San Diego with that reincarnation of the San Diego Sockers that started in 2001. So tonight we're going to start the first part of another multi-part series where we go back into the archives and try to tell the story of those 2001 to 2004 San Diego Soccers. But before we get there, got a couple of current events and a couple of birthdays to get to, and then we'll get ready to jump into today's segment. So for news and current events, I only have one. Dylan, I don't know if you had anything. We'll get this out of the way up front. Do you have anything for news and current events before we get to the one that I have?
No, not particularly. I don't know. I guess I do have a little something, but I don't know if you saw that Landon Donovan interview that was making the rounds a week or two ago, where he told a story about pushing out some more senior player at Loyal. I saw you did. You know the interview, yeah.
I am aware of it. Yes.
Okay, yeah. I saw somebody make a guess as to who it was that I think is probably accurate. And that was Thomas Vakayanzale. I had probably butchered that, but I think that's probably who he was referring to there. I think that was a really good shout. So I don't know if that counts as news, but I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I did see the article and I did see the response by somebody saying that. Yeah, I had, well, two things. I had no idea really to pin it down. There was like 4 or 5 people I thought, maybe it could be. But I found it, I don't know, a little interesting how many people, I guess maybe on the Loyal side, were so interested in who that person was exactly.
I think it
I
might
don't know.
just be like, there's not a lot of new information coming out about
Yeah.
Loyal these days, so you take what you can get.
Sometimes for me, I mean, I enjoy a lot of the pulling back the curtain and understanding what's going on behind the scenes as someone who likes the history of things. But at the same time, there is, for certain clubs that you like, a little bit of magic and mystique about that club, especially once they're done. And sometimes when you pull back the curtain and you get, revelations of things that don't shine players or other things in good light, sometimes those are the things you don't always want to know.
Fair.
Especially when it's a team you care about. So that's one of those times where I was just kind of like, I don't know if I really want to know the answer to this.
Fair enough.
But that's just me personally when it comes to a team I'm invested in. Other than that, as a more of a historian, I would generally be interested in all of that. But let's go ahead for the other piece of kind of current events. Speaking of Loyal, we're going to give a shout out to Javi Nulati, who this past week twice made the bench for the Seattle Sounders. He didn't see playing time, but the 20-year-old is playing for the Tacoma Defiance in MLS Next Pro. And because of injuries, rotation, and other thing happening at Seattle, he actually got called up. As we said, didn't see the field, but called up onto the bench twice. So maybe Javi not too far away from seeing some actual game time at the Division I level in U.S. soccer. So kudos to him, and hope he gets that chance.
Absolutely. That's great to see. I forget how young he is. He's still only 21, but I guess that makes sense seeing as he was 18 during the final Loyal season. But I remember that was one of the first questions people asked when it was announced that Loyal would be folding, was like, why did you have this kid sign a pro contract and nullify any college eligibility he would have had if you knew this was coming? And the answer that Andrew and Landon gave, which, with the benefit of hindsight, seems to have been a wise choice, was that it gave him a foot in the door, which is sometimes the hardest hurdle to clear. And so he's doing well for himself, and I'm really glad to see that. I know the years at Monterey were, he developed, but I don't know if even he would say it was the most successful. Monterey's kind of been an up and down club. So I'm really glad to see him land in a place like Seattle that has like a very proven track record of developing young talent.
Yeah, hopefully he will get his shot soon. All right, so let's transition to birthdays. We were just talking about Seattle. Well, Brian Schmetzer has a birthday today, and we don't honor Brian Schmetzer because he's the Seattle Sounders head coach for his birthday today. We honor him because he is a former San Diego Sockers defender. And since we are doing an episode on the San Diego Sockers, back in the first iteration of the San Diego Sockers, he was one of the star defenders, played alongside Kevin Crowe during many of the Sockers championships. And as most people probably know, hearing the name, he is the current Seattle Sounders head coach, and he is 63 today. And then making our tie back to Loyals, we have 3 former Loyal soccer players that have birthdays this week. Today, also, Irvin Parra from the first year of the San Diego Loyal has a birthday. Camden Riley's got a birthday on Thursday. Tariq Murad has a birthday on Friday. And then our final birthday we're going to look at is Kajel Samuelson, who was a midfielder for the San Diego Jaws. We just did an episode on the San Diego Jaws last week, and we will be picking up with that series again next week. So we'll throw in a little San Diego Jaws birthday. So 5 birthdays for this week? Recognize. And then Dylan, do you have anyone else
No, I
that
think
I'm
that's it.
missing that you're aware of?
I think
Okay,
that's
so let's go ahead and get our in-show trivia question before we actually jump in to our main topic here. And it is, in 1997, Brian Quinn, the answer to our first trivia question we just had, he became the head coach of the San Jose Clash in Major League Soccer. So can you name the 2 San Diego State products that played for him in that 1997 year? All right. Obviously, we'll give the answer after the segment, as we always do. Any ideas on who 1 or 2 of those players might be, given the time frame and the town and the clues, Dylan?
Yeah, I mean, I do have one guess, but I don't know. I don't know how accurate it'll be. So we'll come back to that.
All right. Well, we'll give a couple hints for anybody as they're listening. First hint will be both the players had World Cup experience with the U.S. men's national team by the time they were playing for the San Jose Clash in 1997. And the second hint would be for anyone who listened to our show about the SDSU connection to the 1990 World Cup, you really ought to be able to name both of these players. So we'll leave it with those hints. And again, we will answer it after our main segment here. All right, Dylan, anything else before we jump into our main topic?
No, let's go ahead and dive right in.
All right. Okay. 25 years ago this week, on August 19th, 2001, the new San Diego Sockers lost an indoor match to the Dallas Sidekicks 6-5 in overtime. It was the opening match of the 2001 World Indoor Soccer League season, and the match marked the official return of professional indoor soccer to San Diego after a 5-year absence. So tonight, in part 1 of our series on the second iteration of the San Diego Sockers from 2001 to 2004, we will look at the fall of the original San Diego Sockers. We'll look at the state of soccer in San Diego in the year 1997, and we'll begin to look at the factors that led to the rebirth of San Diego's most storied professional soccer team. While the full details of the demise of the first iteration of the San Diego Sockers will be left to another series, we do need to highlight some key events from that time that are pertinent to our story of the second iteration of the San Diego Sockers. So to do that, we're going to jump back to the year 1997. And before we actually jump into that year, Dylan, any thoughts or comments before we get started?
I turned 3 that year.
Turn 3. All right. I'll say here's to show our age difference to all our listeners on the show who may not know us very well. My youngest was born in 1997.
Right on that millennial Gen Z precipice right
Yeah.
there.
All right. So let's time travel back to early 1997. The Arena Group 2000. This is the group that runs the San Diego Sports Arena and the group that actually stepped in to help save the San Diego Sockers a couple of years prior. Well, they're looking to sell our storied franchise. And if new owners can't be found, the team's likely going to be shut down. Now, this is not an unusual situation for the San Diego Sockers. For anyone who has been a longtime fan since 1978, over their initial 19-year run, there have been multiple times that the Sockers have looked to be on the brink of folding, only for a new group of local investors to swoop in at the last minute and save the day. However, 1997, times are changing. Our country's interest in the outdoor game right now is at an all-time high. Major League Soccer has just launched the previous year, and in doing so, it's taken the nation's top men's soccer talent along with it to that new league. So after a decade or so of indoor leagues being one of the top places for men's soccer players in the US to ply their trade, the indoor game is seeing a steady decline both of talent and with that, spectator interest. So fast forward a couple of months to March 1997, and as the June start date for the Continental Indoor Soccer League fast approaches, now the Continental Indoor Soccer League is what all the teams joined after the major indoor soccer league folded. So we're several seasons into the Continental Indoor Soccer League, or CISL, and their new season is fast coming up here in June. And it appears that in early March here, once again, some new owners have materialized and the Sockers will be saved. And the longest continually running professional soccer team in the United States in 1997 will continue for its 20th season. And that is certainly for the Sockers a point of pride, being that longest continually running professional soccer team in the United States. The new ownership group gets introduced. Everything looks to be moving forward positively. But this is the Sockers, and no ownership change ever goes that smoothly. So if we fast forward just a couple more months to May 1997, we get reports that this new ownership group is not able to secure financing and the deal falls through. So the Sockers are not going to be sold, at least at this moment. And we're just 6 weeks from the start of the new CISL season. So the CISL sets a mid-May deadline, which is just a month out from the start of the official season, sets this mid-May deadline for San Diego to secure new ownership, which based on the moment this happens and the deadline, it's fewer than 2 weeks to make all this happen. So the scramble begins once again to save the San Diego Sockers. Now, several names are being thrown around at this time in terms of ownership. One of them is Bob Bell. He was the original owner of the Sockers. He's the owner that bought the Las Vegas Quicksilvers at the end of 1977, moved them to San Diego, changed the name to the San Diego Sockers, and had them start their first outdoor season in the NASL in 1978. So his name's being tossed around. Another is the local publisher of the San Diego Auto Trader, David Altamare. Altamare has been a longtime supporter of the San Diego Sockers. He's been a season ticket holder from the very beginning back in 1978. And most recently, through the Auto Trader, they've been a main sponsor for the Sockers reserve team. So as this CISL deadline is nearing, there's basically 3 options on the table. 1, fold, which is an option nobody likes, of course. Second one is to relocate the franchise somewhere else, and waiting in the wings is Oklahoma City, who's ready to take the franchise and move forward. And as head coach Brian Quinn said, yeah, it's great for Oklahoma City to get the storied franchise and have them move to Oklahoma, but not so great for San Diego. And the third option, which is probably the most fiscally sound option, is not really, nobody likes it. And that's to take a 1-year hiatus, secure an ownership group, take a year, get everything worked out, and come back to the CISL in 1998. Now, as we said before, the Sockers are very proud of being the current longest continually operating professional soccer club in the United States. So no one's advocating for the hiatus, because the hiatus would strip them of that title. Head coach Brian Quinn says the Sockers really should not take any kind of leave, but if they do, the team should come back as something else. And they should leave the soccer tradition behind, start something new. So, days before the deadline, the CISL gives tentative approval to a new local ownership group. Members of this new local ownership group are not identified in the press. They will be identified once the sale is finally approved by the league. And once again, the Sockers seem to be saved by a last-minute miracle. Now, unfortunately, the CISL holds firm on their deadline because there was some thought that maybe with this last-minute new ownership group, they might have a few more days or some kind of extension, but the league held firm. The local ownership group could not meet all the requirements by the deadline in order to secure league approval of the ownership change. And one of the big sticking points was settling this $200,000 debt owed by the San Diego Sockers to the league. So CISL holds firm, tells the Sockers they are suspended from the league, and with that, the Sockers are stripped of their title as the longest continuously running professional soccer club in the United States. And locally, people are devastated, especially the longtime followers of the San Diego Sockers. Like we said, they've always been saved before. Something always happens last minute and they are rescued. But if we're honest, frankly, most people are probably not all that really surprised, because the Sockers have always seemed to be on the verge of folding, especially if you look back at this maybe for the last 5 to 7 years. So it seems like things have finally caught up with the organization. If anything, the only silver lining is that the CISL does leave the door open for the Sockers to return to the league in 1998. So at this point, the Sockers are in a bit of a limbo. Technically, they're not dead. They haven't folded. If they can find new ownership and satisfy the league requirements, the Sockers can return to the CISL after their 1-year break. Obviously, they won't be able to claim the title of the longest continually running professional soccer club in the United States any longer, but the Sockers and the Sockers legacy would continue. The head coach, Brian Quinn, he was not hopeful. Again, he would state through the media that if the organization takes a year off, they should just return as something else. In fact, he even goes as far to say he's not sure if he wants to be part of any reincarnation of the San Diego Sockers. Elsewhere in our San Diego soccer community, we're making big strides in the outdoor game. And to some people in our local community, it seems like San Diego might be ready to move on and put the Sockers kind of in the rearview mirror. So before we take a look at the state of the rest of San Diego soccer in 1997, especially the outdoor game, Dylan, I'm going to give you a chance to jump in with any thoughts or comments.
I didn't realize there was such a push to move away from the Sockers brand. I can't imagine people even floating that idea in this day and age. I mean, it just seems like it would be so roundly rejected. So it's I knew of the various iterations, but I didn't realize there was even such a potential push away from the branding. So that's pretty interesting to hear.
And I would say head coach Brian Quinn's thoughts were not universal on this, but we were both part of the locals and we were around after the Loyal folded and in that transition period of pivoting towards SDFC. And a lot of the comments I read by people in newspaper articles were similar to some of the conversations that I remember our own supporter group was having at the time. Do we just stop, preserve what it was, and leave it, and just remember it the way it was and start something new? Or do we keep the brand and the name and everything moving forward? It was very interesting to read some of the statements people were making. I was like, I remember having these conversations, 3 years ago, with lots of people. So it wasn't head coach Brian Quinn's position was, rebrand, do something different if you take a break. Uh, but that, as we said, wasn't the universal position of everyone.
Well, I think we lost John for a second. Well, I'll, while we're waiting for him to come back, I'll say that it is interesting to hear that the parallels between kind of the changeover of the locals. I don't know if any of you listeners were involved in that process, but that makes a lot of sense as a parallel. And I will say that my opinions on the matter of oh, John's back. Well, I was just filling the time while you were gone, giving my thoughts on what you were just saying. But it is interesting to hear the parallels kind of between the changeover of the locals vis-a-vis Loyal versus SDFC, and kind of as it relates to leaving something as it was kind of at its end. And I will say that my opinion on that topic has actually evolved quite a bit over time. So I can totally empathize with that opinion, somebody having that.
Yeah, and I think when I got cut out, I was just saying from a fan perspective, there certainly were a lot of fans that were hoping something could happen to bring the team back. All right, so let's go ahead and look at what was happening in San Diego, in and around San Diego, in terms of soccer, specifically outdoor soccer. So, and again, we're really focusing on this year, 1997. So, with the success of the 1994 Men's World Cup, the launch of Major League Soccer in 1996, the 1996 Olympics, and especially our region's ever growing dominance in youth soccer, attention on the outdoor game, especially at the pre professional, professional, and international level, is just exploding. San Diego is routinely in the top TV markets for big soccer matches on television. We are hosting big international matches here in San Diego in front of large crowds. San Diego was in the initial conversations to be one of the original MLS teams. But really, the big holdback was playing venue, which would probably be, I guess at that time we're talking Jack Murphy Stadium. But you already had two tenants, well, three tenants if you count Aztec football. You had the Padres, the Chargers, and Aztec football. So adding another tenant there was going to be tough. So really, something needed to change before San Diego was going to be a serious candidate. But in the years that followed, San Diego was still always in the conversation as a serious contender for an expansion team. And then when we get into our next episode on this, we'll talk a little bit more about that. And frankly, some of the key people affiliated with the San Diego Sockers, with the San Diego Sockers, also seem to be moving on from the indoor game. Former Sockers head coach Brian Quinn, we're not having a team play in the CISL in 1997, and by the summer of 1997, he becomes the second ever coach for the San Jose Clash in Major League Soccer, taking over for Laurie Calloway, and now is coaching, the outdoor game at the top level here in the United States. David Altomare, the publisher for the San Diego Auto Trader, he's still heavily involved in soccer, but he also pivots to outdoor women's soccer. And he starts sponsoring the great Has-Beens team. That's the name of it, the Has-Beens, of the Peninsula Soccer League. And they rebrand as the Auto Trader Select. And it don't think it happened in 97. I think it was 98. That Auto Trader Select team would actually become one of the founding members of the WPSL. So the Auto Trader name, along with David Altomare, is still involved in soccer and still finding ways to promote and be involved. He just pivots to women's soccer here. And in the men's outdoor game, across the country, and again, I think for some people who are younger, or really only remember Major League Soccer as their first kind of national introduction to soccer, we still, at this point, Major League Soccer just started in 96. Prior to Major League Soccer starting, we had national soccer leagues. We had the A-League. We've had some other things kind of filling in the gaps since the NASL folded. And we still have, like, A-League still exists. There's a league that exists below that, where they're both part of USL, or what has evolved all the way through now to be what we consider USL. And we end up having Jan Squara, who right now, I believe still, as of 2026, is the commissioner of the UPSL. He ends up purchasing a team along with at least one other person. I don't know if there was a group, but they purchased the Colorado Foxes of the A-League in December of 1997. And they promptly moved them to San Diego, renamed them the San Diego Flash, and tried to take advantage of that void left by the San Diego Sockers on the men's side and the growing popularity of the outdoor game here in San Diego. And then finally, also at the very end of 1997, if we go back and look at the Continental Indoor Soccer League, the league that told the Sockers, they were basically suspended for that year, but they could come back the next year. Well, 1997 would be their final season. Several teams would leave, they'd close up shop, and the league would fold. So by the end of 1997, even if there were discussions for the Sockers coming back, there's now no league to return to, even if they secure new ownership. And that event seems to be the final nail in the coffin, causing many in the local soccer community to finally accept that the era of the San Diego Sockers had come to an end. However, and I would say surprisingly, in 1999, when most of the San Diego soccer community had long given up hope that the Sockers would ever return, the stars began to align. Several key events and key people would fall into place and eventually open the door for a potential return of the San Diego Sockers. And we'll take a look at exactly what happened in 1999 in our next episode in our series of the 2001 to 2004 San Diego Sockers. So Dylan, I'm going to toss it to you for any additional thoughts and comments as we just kind of get our first tease into the story about the second iteration of the San Diego Sockers and how they came about. And any thoughts here?
Nothing really of substance to add, but I do just want to say this is perhaps your best constructed cliffhanger yet thus far.
Nice.
Really got us going, and then we'll see you next time.
Yeah, well, I thought we'd keep this one a little bit shorter. I felt we went a little long last time. And it was just, well, I think that was part of the problem. As I was constructing this, the next part of this, we could have done also tonight, but I felt it would have been very long again. It just made for a nice, kind of convenient place to stop, and then maybe also allow a little breathing room, especially as we get to the year 1999 and all the things that happen there that kind of open the door for the San Diego Sockers to actually return, even though they don't return, as we talked about in the opening, till 2001. So it's a kind of interesting story, and we kind of laid out the key characters here that we'll be hearing more from as we get back to 1999 and then again all the way into 2001. But yeah, it's been fun looking at this one. There's so many things happening in San Diego around this time. You've got, we've just done several episodes in our series of the San Diego Spirit. So, that idea of a women's professional league is in the national conversation around this time as we're heading into the 99 World Cup, but gets delayed, as we talked about in the other series, till after the 2000 Olympics. So, those conversations are happening. Probably, I'm guessing, a little bit why the Auto Trader sponsorship, kind of pivots to women's soccer. And in the WPSL in those first years, and we'll cover this in another series that we do later, but so many top women's athletes are playing in the WPSL in these first years before the WUSA actually starts. But there's that. There's the A-League stuff with the Flash, and they're getting 2,000 to 3,000 people to their matches, which is really along the lines of what the NASL teams were getting back in the 70s. So you've got some very strong support in San Diego, and certainly the growing and ever-changing, youth soccer that's happening, and our dominance in youth soccer on both the boys and the girls' side, but especially the girls' side here in San Diego, which helps lead to the players we've talked about before recently, Shannon McMillan and Jen Lawler and Mandy Clemens, and some of those people who were all, in the youth, in various stages of their youth soccer around this time. And maybe early in her stages, Nikki Sarlenga. But again, some of the players we've talked about before, a lot of this is all coming together at this particular point. All right, let me get back to the other rundown here. And oh yeah, we need to get to the answer to our trivia question. So let me pull the question back up one more time. And it is in 1997, Brian Quinn became coach of the San Jose Clash. Name the two San Diego State products that played for him. All right, so Dylan, you said you thought you might have an idea of maybe one of them.
Yeah, I actually, and it looks like I may have been correct. I recalled we talked about Eric Winalda's time at San Diego State, and the reason I wasn't sure was I couldn't remember if he played for San Jose or not, but it looks like he did. So,
well, he did, and he actually, while playing for the San Jose Clash, Eric Winalda scored the very first goal in Major League Soccer history.
huh?
Another trivia question.
That's
that's
a good bar trivia question. I'll keep that in mind.
So I think Winalda was there for 3 years, something close to that. So he was there in the beginning, obviously scored that very first goal in MLS history. And then, therefore, once Brian Quinn came along and was the coach. So Eric Winalda was one of them. Do you remember the other one before I put it up on the screen?
No, I had no idea.
He was one of the other three that we had in a previous episode about the 1990 SDSU's connection to the 1990 World Cup. So that would be Eric Winalda and Chris Sullivan. The third San Diego State player from that other episode was Marcelo Balboa. But Eric Winalda and Chris Sullivan were the two San Diego State players that were there at the San Jose Clash in 1997. I'm not sure Chris Sullivan was there in 96. but they were there in 97. Okay, that is our trivia question. I don't really have too much before we wrap up here. Do you have anything else, Dylan, or anything we're forgetting?
I don't believe so. I think that got it all.
All right, well, let's start wrapping this episode up then. Just a reminder, this week in San Diego Soccer History is brought to you by the San Diego Soccer History Society, a grassroots organization looking to uncover and preserve San Diego's rich soccer history and culture. If you like what we're doing, please help us spread the word, like and subscribe here on YouTube, engage in our community section here on YouTube, follow us on Blue Sky at sdsoccerhistory.org. And if you like San Diego soccer and history altogether, please join our volunteer team of researchers. You can send an email to me, john@bigpinedigital.com, and I will let you know what you need to do. I'm actually having a meeting with a couple people in person tomorrow, so we'll see how that goes, and may have some things to announce on next week's show. All right. I hope everyone enjoyed this week's first episode in our series on the 2001 to 2004 San Diego Soccers, which would be the second iteration of the San Diego Soccers. We're going to be back next week with another episode in our series on the San Diego Jaws as we get closer and closer to wrapping up that series as we are celebrating the 50th anniversary this year of the San Diego Jaws. So speaking of the San Diego Jaws, that's going to lead us to this week's closing trivia question. So let me get that one pulled up. All right, this former San Diego Jaws player made San Diego his home in 1980 and was inducted into the Cal South Soccer Hall of Fame in 2015 for his contributions to youth soccer. All right. Any thoughts? You probably don't, Dylan.
I got nothing. No, I got
with your
nothing.
newer experience here in San Diego. But again, if you're of my age, this person had their name attached to very popular soccer camps here in the county, but also has coached at the high school level, has coached at various clubs around the county, has won numerous titles, and I believe still currently resides in San Marcos, and has just been around for a very long time and was part of that 1976 Jaws team, and also had extensive career in England before he came to San Diego. And I guess the last hint I'll probably give for this, he's originally from Northern Ireland. So we'll see if that might help anybody in their in their tries at guessing who this particular person is. Okay. Dylan, you said no, right? I don't know, no even guesses on this one at all.
I still don't think so, but the Northern Ireland bit does give me something to mull over. So we'll see if I can come up with anything.
All right. Well, I someone really desperately wants to search the San Diego Jaws roster. I'm not sure how many players they had total from Northern Ireland, so could help narrow down some things. All right, Dylan, before we officially sign off here, any final thoughts before we go?
No, not pertaining to our topic today. I think looking forward to the next one. Like I said, it was a good cliffhanger.
Yeah, we got very excited for quite a few of the shows coming up here that we have lined up over the next few weeks. So hope that people enjoy those. Okay, I think that wraps it up for us. Please don't forget to send in your answers to this week's trivia question, and we'll see you next time on This Week in San Diego Soccer History.